That sentence still doesn't feel real when I say it out loud. It sounds like a nightmare, something you'd wake up sweating from. Not something that could happen to a woman who trusted, who believed, who built a life on quiet faith. The morning I learned the truth, the sky was the color of dishwater. Grey and heavy, the kind of morning that presses on your chest. I remember standing by the sink, holding his phone like it was burning through my palm. The photo on the screen was of a small white coffin, surrounded by lilies, and a woman I didn't know, weeping over it. It wasn't me in that picture. It wasn't our home. But the name carved into the tiny headstone was our son's. And in that moment, I realized the man I loved had buried our child in another life. Before that day, I would have described our life as ordinary, peaceful even. We lived in a modest house on the edge of town, with white curtains that danced whenever the wind came through the kitchen window. My husband Daniel worked in logistics, which meant late calls, spreadsheets, and long drives to warehouses in nearby cities. I was a school counselor. My life was full of small stories. Children with bruised hearts, mothers who worried too much. Our son, Noah, was the light of everything. He was 8. He had his father's eyes. Warm brown, but always carrying that spark of curiosity I used to fall for. Every Friday, we had our routine, pizza with extra cheese, and an animated movie he'd seen a dozen times. I remember how he'd lean against me, greasy fingers on my arm, whispering, "Mom, do you think dogs dream?" Those were the sounds of my life. The hum of the dishwasher, the soft slam of his sneakers on tile, the clatter of Daniel's keys on the counter. Until the night everything stopped. It was raining hard that evening. I was at home, setting the table, waiting for Daniel to bring Noah back from his weekend football practice. They were late, half an hour, then an hour. When I called, Daniel's voice was shaky. I could hear wind through the line. "There's been an accident," he said. The words didn't make sense. He said Noah had run across the road. A car came too fast. He said he didn't make it. I remember dropping the phone. The world went white, like snow crashing down on me. The next few days blurred into hospital corridors, paperwork, condolences. Only, there was no body to see. Daniel said the authorities had insisted on a closed casket. He said it was better not to remember Noah that way. I wanted to see him. I begged to see him. But Daniel kept saying, "Don't do this to yourself, Emma. Please." He handled the funeral arrangements. He said it was too much for me to bear. I didn't argue. I was broken open, hollow. He told me he'd taken care of it. Small service, private. Said it was what Noah would have wanted. So I believed him. I trusted the man who shared my bed, who wiped my tears, who whispered, "We'll get through this." For weeks after, I drifted through life like a ghost. I took leave from work. The house became a museum of small things. Noah's toy cars lined on the window ledge, his school shoes still by the door. Sometimes I'd sit in his room just to breathe the faint scent of him. Sunblock and pencil shavings. Daniel changed too. He grew quieter, more guarded. I thought grief had swallowed him differently. He started leaving early, returning late. I didn't question it. Grief makes people strange, but something about him was off. Too polished, too composed. He didn't cry after that first week. Not once. Then, one night as I was folding laundry, his phone buzzed on the counter. It was late, past midnight. A message flashed on the screen before it dimmed again. Just one word, "Thank you," and a heart emoji. I stared at it. My heart thudded once, hard. Who texts a man thank you in the middle of the night? And why does he smile in his sleep after reading it? I tried to dismiss it, told myself people grieve differently. That I was paranoid. But small things started stacking up, like pebbles building a wall. One Saturday, he said he was driving out of town to visit the site. He said he needed closure, but when I offered to come, he refused sharply. "I need to do this alone," he said, his voice like cold glass. Another time, while doing laundry, I found a child's drawing crumpled in his coat pocket, a simple sketch. A stick figure of a man and a boy holding hands. In shaky handwriting, it said, "Me and Daddy." I froze. My fingers trembled as I smoothed it out. The paper was new. The crayon lines weren't faded. My first thought was denial. Maybe Noah had drawn it long ago, and Daniel had kept it. But deep down, something dark and sick began to coil in me. A whisper that said, "What if it's not Noah's at all?" The real crack came 2 months later. Daniel had left for another overnight meeting. I was cleaning out the kitchen drawers when I found his old phone. The one he said had stopped working. It powered on easily. I shouldn't have looked, but I did. There were photos, hundreds of them, but most were ordinary. Office shots, receipts, road signs. And then, in one folder, I found it. The folder was named July 14th, Farewell. Inside were pictures of a funeral I had never attended. A small white coffin covered in lilies. Dozens of faces I didn't recognize. A woman kneeling by the coffin, crying so hard her body was bent double. And in one of the photos, Daniel standing beside her, hand on her shoulder, his expression, gentle, familiar. And then my eyes caught the inscription on the tiny tombstone. Noah James Carter. Our beloved son. Our son. Our Noah. But that woman wasn't me. I don't remember falling to the floor, but I remember the sound. The low, animal sound that came out of me. The phone slipped from my hand and hit the tiles. For a long time, I just stared at the ceiling, the room spinning around me. When he came home later that night, I was sitting at the table, the phone in front of me. "Daniel," I said quietly, my voice barely a whisper. "Who is she?" He froze. His eyes darted to the phone, then back to me. I could see the moment his mask cracked. "Emma, I can explain," he said. But I didn't want explanations. Not yet. I wanted truth. And truth, I was beginning to realize, was something he'd buried. Along with our son, he sat down slowly, like a man walking into his own trial. For a long moment, we just stared at each other. The only sound in the room was the low hum of the refrigerator, the kind of silence that's heavier than shouting. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm, almost rehearsed. "She's someone I knew before you," he said. "Her name's Laura." I didn't respond. My hands were clenched on the table, but my chest felt hollow. "She had a son," he continued, his throat tightening. "He was sick. She needed help paying for treatment. I helped them. I didn't tell you because I didn't think you'd understand." He said it like it was charity, but I'd seen the photo. The way his hand rested on that woman's shoulder, not like a friend, but like a man who belonged there. "And the name?" I whispered. "Noah James Carter, our son's name." He hesitated, just long enough to make the air between us go cold. "That's a coincidence," he said weakly. It was the wrong thing to say. I stood up so fast the chair screeched. "A coincidence? You gave our son's name to another child's grave. And you think I'll believe that?" He ran a hand over his face. "Emma, please. You're not thinking clearly. You're grieving. You're seeing things that aren't there." His voice softened, gentle, practiced. The same tone he'd used when Noah fell off his bike and I panicked. A tone meant to calm me, to make me small. But I wasn't that woman anymore. "Show me the death certificate," I said. He blinked. "What?" "You said Noah's gone. Show me the paperwork. The certificate. The proof." Daniel's lips parted, but no words came. He just stared at me. A flicker of something crossing his face. Fear, maybe. Then he said, "It's in storage." "Where?" He hesitated again. "At my office." I smiled. "A bitter, broken thing. Then we'll go tomorrow." That night, I didn't sleep. I lay beside him, my body rigid, listening to the rhythm of his breathing. Each exhale felt like a lie seeping into the air between us. I thought of Noah, of his laugh, of the way he used to crawl into bed between us on stormy nights. I thought about how real he was, his smell, his warmth. I couldn't reconcile that with a coffin in someone else's photograph. Sometime around dawn, I heard the front door open. Quietly, I got up, looked through the window, saw his car pulling out of the driveway. No suitcase, no call, no goodbye. I knew then that whatever truth he'd buried, he was protecting it, not me. By midday, I was sitting in his office parking lot. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel. I didn't even have a plan, just an ache that needed answers. His office building was small, gray, with glass doors that reflected everything except truth. The receptionist looked startled to see me. "I'm here for Daniel Carter," I said, forcing a smile. "Oh," she said, glancing down at her desk. "He's out today, left early for a family matter." Family matter. The word sliced clean through me. "Do you know where he went?" I asked. She hesitated, then said, "He mentioned needing to stop by St. Martin's Church." I thanked her and left, but my pulse was pounding in my ears. St. Martin's was on the outskirts of town. It wasn't where we'd said our goodbyes to Noah. It wasn't anywhere I'd ever been. The church sat on a hill, old and weathered. There were cars in the gravel lot, and I recognized one immediately, Daniel's silver sedan. I walked through the gate, every step heavy. The sound of birds seemed too bright for the weight in my chest. And then I saw him. He was standing by a small grave, his back to me, and next to him, the woman from the photo, Laura. She was holding flowers. He was holding her hand. I froze. The world seemed to narrow, my breath catching in my throat. I should have turned away. I should have left quietly. But something in me, something that had been silent too long, snapped. "Daniel!" He spun around. The color drained from his face. "Emma." The woman flinched, clutching her flowers. "Who is she?" she asked, her voice trembling. I walked toward them, my heels crunching against gravel. "You tell her, Daniel. Tell her who I am." He stepped forward, palms raised like he was calming a wild animal. "Emma, please. Who am I?" I shouted. My voice echoed off the church walls. He didn't answer, so I did. "I'm his wife." Laura's face went blank, then white. She looked at him, really looked at him. And I saw the exact moment her faith cracked in half. "You told me you were divorced," she whispered. Daniel's lips parted, but no sound came. "You said your son—" She stopped, choking on the words. "You said he was ours." The silence that followed was unbearable. He finally spoke, his voice hoarse. "I didn't mean for it to go this far." Laura took a step back, shaking. "You lied to me about everything?" He reached for her arm, but she pulled away like he'd burned her. And that's when I realized. We were both grieving women, both deceived by the same man, both robbed of truth. I turned to the small white coffin marker, the same one from the photo, the same name carved in stone, Noah James Carter. My knees went weak. I touched the headstone, tracing the letters with my fingertips. "Who's buried here, Daniel?" I whispered. "If our son is gone, where's his body? And if he's alive, where is he?" He didn't answer. His face twisted, his mouth trembling. "Emma, please, let's not do this here." But I needed to hear it. I needed to know which lie I was living. Laura was crying now, her hands over her mouth. "Tell her," she said to him, voice breaking. "Tell her the truth, Daniel." And then, he did, at least part of it. He confessed that the boy buried here wasn't ours, that Laura's child, her real son, had died, that he had used Noah's name because he didn't want to explain the double life he'd built. I stared at him, barely breathing. "Double life?" He nodded, tears spilling now. "I never meant to hurt you. I couldn't let go of either of you. For a moment, Everything went silent, the kind of silence that comes before a storm. "You couldn't let go?" I said quietly. "You let me bury my son in my heart. You made me mourn a living child." Laura's knees buckled. She sank to the ground, sobbing, and in that strange, terrible moment, I felt pity for her. We were both living in his lies, but pity is not forgiveness. I straightened, looked Daniel in the eye, and said the one thing I knew would haunt him forever. "You don't deserve to be anyone's father." Then I turned and walked away, leaving him standing between two women, one grave, and the wreckage of every lie he'd built. But as I drove home, one question kept clawing at me. If the boy in that grave wasn't Noah, where was my son? The drive home blurred into a haze of road and memory. My fingers were locked around the steering wheel, knuckles white. The rain started halfway back. Fat, angry drops that pounded the windshield in uneven bursts. I kept hearing his words. "I couldn't let go of either of you, like love was something you could hoard. Keep in two separate houses. Feed lies to both ends until it collapsed." When I pulled into the driveway, the house looked foreign. The curtains still open, the porch light flickering like it didn't know whether to stay on or die out. Inside, everything was exactly where it had been. Noah's shoes by the door, his little blue backpack on the hook. I sat down on the living room floor, staring at those small reminders, and felt something shift inside me. Not grief this time, but resolve. If Daniel had buried someone else's son using Noah's name, that meant my child might still be alive, and I was going to find him. The next morning, I started with the obvious: hospitals, police, records. I called the emergency response office. From the night Daniel claimed the accident happened, I gave them the date, his name, the supposed location. The officer on the line typed for a while, then said, "Ma'am, there's no record of any accident matching that description on that day." "No record? Are you sure?" I asked, my voice cracking. "An 8-year-old boy named Noah Carter." She checked again. "Nothing under that name. Nothing in that area." The line went quiet except for her polite breathing. My heart was pounding so hard, I thought she might hear it through the phone. "Thank you," I managed to whisper. When I hung up, I just sat there for a long time, the silence pressing down on me. Daniel hadn't just lied. He'd fabricated an entire death. That afternoon, I went through his study, something I'd avoided since the day Noah died. His office smelled like paper and old cologne. Every drawer felt like a confession waiting to be opened. I found an old folder labeled insurance, personal. Inside were 2 forms, one in my name, one in Laura's. Same company, same handwriting. And at the back, a copy of a school registration form. My breath caught when I saw the name, Noah L. Stevens. Different surname, same birth date. Same favorite color, written in the child's preferences line. Blue. I flipped the paper over, and there it was. His signature. Daniel's. The school name was printed at the top. Brighton Academy, Springdale. I grabbed my keys. Springdale was 2 hours away. A small town surrounded by farms and flat roads. I didn't know what I'd find there. Part of me was terrified. What if this led nowhere? What if I was chasing ghosts? But another part of me, the mother part, didn't care. When I reached the school, it was recess. Children's laughter echoed across the yard, sharp and bright. I walked to the reception window, trying to keep my voice steady. "Hi, I'm here about student records," I said. "Noah Stevens. I'm his relative." The woman at the desk frowned, glancing at her computer. "Are you his aunt or his mother?" I said before I could stop myself. She paused. "Oh, I'm sorry, Mrs. Stevens. I didn't recognize you without..." She stopped abruptly, confusion crossing her face. "Wait, I thought you were taller." My stomach dropped. Could I see a recent photo of Noah? I asked quietly. She hesitated. We're not supposed to share images without... I pulled out my wallet and showed her the picture of my Noah, taken a year ago. A bright-eyed boy with a missing front tooth. Please, I said. I just need to know if this is him. She looked at the photo for a long time. Then she nodded slowly. Yes, she said softly. That's him, but his last name here is Stevens. His mother is listed as Laura Stevens. I felt the ground tilt beneath me. So he's alive? Yes, she said. He was just here this morning. The world seemed to stop spinning. Alive? My son was alive. I pressed a trembling hand over my mouth to stifle the sob clawing its way out. The receptionist looked alarmed. Ma'am, are you all right? I nodded barely. I need to see him, please. I'm sorry, she said, uneasy. Parents only. I can call Mrs. Stevens if... No, I said quickly. Don't. I walked out before she could ask more questions. Outside, the sound of children playing felt like a dream. My heart was beating so fast, it hurt. I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel. Through the fence, I could see a group of kids playing soccer. And there he was, Noah. Same messy brown hair, same awkward kick. He laughed. That same unfiltered, bright laugh I thought I'd never hear again. He was alive. I started sobbing. Deep, shaking sobs that came from somewhere ancient in me. But underneath the joy was rage. White-hot, unrelenting rage. Daniel had taken him, lied to me, made me mourn my own child while raising him under another woman's name. And Laura, was she a victim or had she played along? Either way, they'd stolen years from me. I waited until school ended. I didn't know what I would do, just that I couldn't leave without something. Proof, a word, a glimpse. At 3:10, the children began streaming out. I watched from the car, hidden behind tinted glass. Noah came out with a backpack, almost too big for him. He was holding someone's hand, Laura's. She looked tired. Kind, maybe. I couldn't tell anymore. I wanted to run to him, to scream his name, but something in me held back. If I showed up now, it would be chaos. And if she believed Daniel's story, that I was unstable or dangerous, I could lose him again. No, I needed to be careful. So I followed them. They walked to a small blue house near the park. I parked a few houses down, heart hammering. Through the window, I saw them sit at a table. She serving soup, him talking animatedly. A normal evening. My son in another woman's kitchen. It was like watching someone else's life. A cruel mirror image of what mine used to be. I stayed until night fell, until the light in his window went out. Then I drove home, shaking all over, my face wet with tears. I didn't remember crying. By the time I reached the driveway, I'd made up my mind. Daniel was going to tell me everything. Or I'd take the truth from him piece by piece. When he came home the next evening, I was ready. His briefcase was barely on the floor when I said, I saw him. He froze. Saw who? Our son, I said, my voice steady. At Brighton Academy. His name's Noah Stevens now, isn't it? For a moment, he looked like a man whose heart had stopped. Then, the mask slipped again. You shouldn't have gone there, he said softly. Don't you dare tell me what I should have done, I snapped. You stole my child, Daniel. You made me bury him in my mind. He ran a hand through his hair. I did it for you, he said quietly. You were falling apart. You couldn't handle his illness. What illness? I demanded. He hesitated. Asthma, he said finally. The attacks were getting worse. Laura's son was dying. When he passed, He broke off, swallowing hard. I saw a way to save you both. I stared at him, horror flooding my chest. So you traded lives. I thought it was mercy, he said. Mercy? My voice rose. You let me think my son was dead. He looked at me then, broken, hollow. You weren't supposed to find out. I took a step back. You're right, I said quietly. I wasn't supposed to. But now that I have, I met his eyes. I'll make sure the whole world knows what you did. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table long after Daniel went upstairs, my hands wrapped around a cold cup of tea that had lost its warmth hours ago. Every sound in the house, the ticking clock, the groan of wood as the wind pressed against the walls, felt amplified. I kept seeing Noah's face, his laughter, the way he'd looked up at Laura, with the kind of ease that only comes from trust. He didn't remember me. That realization cut deeper than anything Daniel had said. By dawn, I knew what I had to do. I started by calling a lawyer. Her name was Sandra Wu, a calm, deliberate woman whose voice carried quiet authority. When I told her what had happened, there was a long pause on the line. Let me get this straight, she said. Your husband faked your son's death, changed his identity, and has been raising him with another woman. Yes, I said. And that other woman thinks she's his mother. Sandra exhaled. This isn't just family law. This borders on kidnapping and fraud. But we'll need proof. Documents, photos, anything that ties your son's real identity to this new one. I already had those. The school forms, the insurance papers, the funeral photos. When I met her in person later that day, I handed everything over. She flipped through the stacks slowly, her expression darkening with each page. This is unbelievable, she murmured. He forged death records. I nodded. She looked up. This won't stay quiet once it's in motion. Are you ready for that? Ready! No, but determined. Absolutely. I just want my son back, I said. She gave a small nod. Then let's start. That afternoon, I went to the police. Filing the report felt surreal. Sitting in that grey room, with fluorescent lights humming overhead, I told the story like it belonged to someone else. The officer taking notes looked up halfway through and said, "Ma'am, I need to confirm. You're saying your husband declared your son dead without legal verification?" "Yes, and I have evidence that my son is alive, under another name." When he saw the photos, Noah's face in both identities, he whistled softly. "We'll open an investigation. You'll need to stay reachable. Reachable." That word stuck with me. For years, I hadn't been reachable to my own child. Daniel came home late again that night, as if nothing had happened. He moved through the house like a man rehearsing normalcy. I sat at the dining table waiting. "You went to the police, didn't you?" he asked before I said a word. "Yes," I said. "And to a lawyer." He nodded slowly, a muscle in his jaw tightening. "You're making a mistake, Evelyn." "Was it a mistake when you let me think our son was dead?" I asked quietly. He didn't answer. I stood. "You said you did it for me, so tell me, how does it help me to lose my child and my husband in the same breath?" He looked away, shame flickering across his face. "You could have told me the truth," I said. "I would have fought for Noah's health. I would have cared for him. I would have done anything. But you didn't give me the chance." His voice was almost a whisper. "I was afraid you'd leave." I stared at him, stunned. "So you took everything from me instead?" Something in him broke then. He sank into a chair, hands covering his face. I thought I was saving us, but I just didn't know how to stop lying once it started. For a fleeting second, I saw the man I'd married. Exhausted, flawed, lost. But then I remembered standing at a fake grave, crying over a lie, and pity turned to steel. The investigation moved faster than I expected. 2 weeks later, the police contacted me. They had verified that Noah's official death certificate had been forged, and that Daniel had created a new identity with a falsified birth certificate. When they asked if I wanted to press charges, my voice didn't tremble once. "Yes," I said. The next days were chaos. The police came to our home in the morning. I watched from the porch as they placed handcuffs on Daniel. He didn't resist. He didn't look at me. Reporters showed up within hours. Word spread fast. Local businessman arrested for falsifying child's death. Neighbors whispered. Friends texted, but didn't know what to say. And I sat in the quiet of the living room, the same spot where I'd once wept for a child I thought I'd lost, and now wept again, but this time from the strange mix of grief and relief. It took a week before I was allowed to see Noah. The authorities arranged a supervised meeting. Laura was there too, her eyes red and swollen. When she saw me, she flinched. Confusion, fear, maybe guilt. I didn't know, she said immediately. He told me you'd died, that you were unstable, that I was saving the boy. Her voice cracked. I swear I didn't know. For a long time, I couldn't speak. Then I said softly, "He lied to both of us." She nodded, tears spilling down her face. And then I saw him, Noah, walking hesitantly into the room. My breath caught. He looked a little taller. His hair was shorter now, but his eyes, those eyes, were still my son's. I knelt down. "Hi, baby," I whispered. He tilted his head. "Who are you?" It was the softest question I'd ever been asked, and it broke something deep inside me. Laura covered her mouth with her hand. I swallowed hard. "I'm someone who loves you very much," I said. He studied me for a moment, then smiled shyly. Okay, it wasn't recognition, but it was a start. After that day, there were court hearings, custody evaluations, therapy sessions. It was a long, slow process. A tangle of paperwork and emotion. The world judged, of course. Some called me strong, others pitied me, but I learned to tune them out. Every week, I got to see Noah. We'd draw together, talk about school, play with puzzles. Sometimes, when he laughed a certain way, I caught glimpses of the boy I'd held years ago. One day he asked, "Did you know my dad?" I paused. "Yes," I said quietly. I knew him very well. He frowned. "He's in trouble, isn't he?" "Yes," I said again, "because he made a big mistake." He thought about that, then asked, "Do you still love him?" The truth settled heavy in my chest. "I don't know," I said honestly, "but I still believe people can change." He nodded like that made sense to him. Kids have a way of accepting the impossible. A few months later, the verdict came. Daniel was sentenced for fraud, falsification of documents, and unlawful custody. When the judge read the sentence, he didn't look at me once. But when they led him away, he turned briefly, his eyes full of something between regret and surrender. I didn't wave. I didn't smile. I just stood there, holding my son's hand. The following weeks were quiet again, the kind of quiet that comes after a storm. The house felt empty, yes, but also clean, honest. Noah started staying with me full-time after Laura and I reached an agreement. She visited sometimes. It wasn't easy, but she was gentle. And she loved him too. And I couldn't fault her for that. Slowly, piece by piece, we began to build something like peace. There are mornings now when I wake to the sound of Noah humming in the kitchen. It's usually some tune from his cartoons, slightly off-key, but it fills the house with a kind of fragile joy that I never thought I'd hear again. The first time it happened, I stood at the doorway, watching him pour milk into his cereal, half of it missing the bowl. He looked up, grinned, and said, "You're staring again." "I just like seeing you happy," I said. He shrugged in that way children do when they don't understand the weight of a moment. "I like being here." Those 4 words were enough to dissolve months of ache in my chest. Healing didn't come quickly. It came in uneven steps. Through therapy sessions, where I had to retell everything I'd endured. Through nights where nightmares still dragged me back to that fake funeral. Through mornings when I would reach for the phone, half expecting another lie to unravel. But slowly, I began to reclaim my life. I repainted the living room, a soft cream color that made the light gentler. I packed away Daniel's belongings, one box at a time. There was no rage, no burning desire to destroy anything, just release. Even Laura and I found a kind of strange companionship. We met once a week for coffee, talking about Noah, about the mess we'd both been caught in. She'd apologize often, until one day I told her to stop. "You were lied to," I said. "Same as me. The only one who should apologize can't anymore." She nodded, eyes wet. "You're stronger than I am." "No," I said softly. "I just got tired of being broken." Noah's memories came back in fragments. One day, he pointed at a photo of me, holding him as a baby, and said, "That was my blanket, the one with the blue stars." I froze, then smiled. "Yes, you used to carry it everywhere." It was like watching the past slowly knit itself back together, stitch by delicate stitch. Sometimes he'd ask about his father. I never badmouthed Daniel. I couldn't. For all his cruelty, he had still loved Noah in his own twisted, desperate way. I told him the truth, but gently. "Your dad made a lot of mistakes," I said one night, tucking him in. "But he loved you. That's the only part I want you to remember." He thought about it, then asked, "Do you still love him?" The question came again, smaller this time. "I'll always care about the man he could have been," I said. "But love needs truth, and he didn't have that." Noah nodded slowly, like he was storing that lesson away. Months passed. Seasons changed. I found a job at a local community center, helping single mothers with legal aid and emotional support. It wasn't glamorous, but it gave my pain a purpose. Every time I sat across from a woman clutching her hands in fear or shame, I saw a version of myself. And every time I helped her take her first step toward freedom, it felt like reclaiming another piece of my own story. One evening after a long day, I found Noah drawing at the kitchen table. He was sketching a picture of 3 people, me, him, and Laura, holding hands under a sun that had far too many rays. "What's this?" I asked. "Our family," he said simply. "You, me, and her. Dad can't come right now, but maybe one day he'll be better." It was such an innocent kind of hope that my eyes filled before I could stop them. "Yes," I whispered. "Maybe one day." Time has a way of softening even the sharpest memories. A year later, I received a letter from Daniel. It came from the correctional facility. Neat handwriting, familiar loops in the letters. He wrote about counseling sessions he'd started, about learning to tell the truth even when it hurt. He said he'd been diagnosed with something called delusional protective disorder, a name for the sickness that made him believe control equaled safety. He ended the letter with one line that I read over and over again. "If you can forgive me, even a little, maybe I can start forgiving myself." I didn't respond right away. Forgiveness, I learned, isn't a letter you send. It's a slow exhale after years of holding your breath. A few months later, I wrote back. I didn't say much, just that Noah was happy, that he was healthy, and that I hoped Daniel was trying to become a man worthy of the love he once destroyed. I didn't sign it with love, just my name. That was enough. Now when I look back, I realized the real betrayal wasn't just losing my son. It was being robbed of the truth. Lies steal time. They steal choices. But truth, even when it hurts, gives you back your power. If there's anything I've learned, it's that survival isn't about staying strong. It's about choosing peace after the storm has passed. Noah and I still visit the park sometimes. The same one we used to before everything fell apart. He runs ahead, calling my name, laughing, turning back just to make sure I'm following. I always am, because this time, nothing will ever take him from me again. Sometimes life breaks in ways you never expect, not with a bang, but with a quiet lie whispered by someone you once trusted with your heart. When I think about everything that happened, the fake funeral, the stolen years, the child I had to meet again like a stranger, I still don't fully understand how we survived it. But maybe survival isn't about understanding. Maybe it's about choosing to stand, even when the ground beneath you is made of shattered truth. People often ask me now, do you regret forgiving him? And I always say, forgiveness isn't a gift for the person who hurt you. It's the key that lets you walk out of the prison they built in your mind. I didn't forgive Daniel because he deserved it. I forgave him because I deserved peace. If you've ever been lied to in a way that stole your breath, if someone ever buried the truth so deep that you started to question your own reality, I hope my story reminds you of this. You can lose almost everything and still find yourself again. It won't happen overnight. It won't happen cleanly. But one day you'll wake up and the sound of your own laughter, or your child's, or your friends, will feel like sunlight after years of rain. And when that happens, you'll realize you didn't just survive the lie. You outlived it, because truth always has a way of finding light. No matter how long it's been buried, would you have forgiven him? Or would you have walked away forever? Tell me in the comments below. I read every story you share. And if this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join me next time for another true story from a voice that refuses to stay silent. Until then, take care of your truth and of your heart. Evelyn.